There is a story about a man named Epictetus. Before he was a philosopher, he was a slave. His leg was broken by his master. Some accounts say deliberately, twisted in an act of casual cruelty. And as the bone snapped, Epictetus did not scream, did not beg, did not curse the man standing over him. He simply said calmly, "You will break my leg." And when it broke, he added, "Didn't I tell you that you would?" That single sentence contains more power than most people discover in an entire lifetime. Because what Epictetus understood, in that moment of unimaginable pain, was something almost no one around him understood. He understood the difference between what happens to you and what happens inside you. And once you understand that difference, nothing, not betrayal, not loss, not failure, not even physical agony, can ever fully touch you again. Today, you are going to learn the 10 principles that allowed a crippled slave to become one of the most powerful minds in human history. Principles so strong that Roman emperors studied them. Principles so practical that modern psychologists now build entire therapies around them. By the end of this video, you will not see your problems the same way again. You will have a framework tested by war, slavery, exile, and death that lets you remain unshaken no matter what life throws at you. Stay until the end, because principle number 10 is the one Epictetus himself called the master key, the one that, once understood, makes everything else fall into place. Welcome back to Wisdom of the Stoics, the place where ancient philosophy meets modern struggle, where we take the hardest-won wisdom of history's greatest thinkers and turn it into something you can actually use today in your real life, with your real problems. If you're new here, consider subscribing, because every week we bring you the tools the Stoics used to build unshakable minds. And if you've been here before, welcome home. Let's begin. Principle 1. The dichotomy of control. Epictetus opened his most famous work, the Enchiridion, with a single idea so simple that people miss its depth entirely. He wrote that some things are up to us, and some things are not up to us. Up to us, our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, in short, everything that is our own doing. Not up to us, our body, our property, our reputation, our position, in short, everything that is not our own doing. Think about how much of your daily suffering comes from fighting this line. You are angry at traffic, something not up to you. You are anxious about what a stranger thinks of you, something not up to you. You are devastated by a diagnosis, a layoff, a breakup, outcomes that were never fully within your control to begin with. Epictetus is not telling you not to care. He is telling you to stop wasting your finite emotional energy on a battle you were never going to win. Picture a man named Marcus, not Marcus Aurelius, just an ordinary man living an ordinary life today. Marcus spends 2 hours every night replaying an email his boss sent him, wondering what he meant by one ambiguous sentence. He cannot sleep. He is not exhausted because of the email. He is exhausted because he has planted his sense of peace in soil that was never his to tend. The email was sent. That is done. Not up to him. What is up to him is only how he interprets it and what he does next. This is the first move in Stoic practice. Not resignation, not passivity, but a radical redirection of energy. Ask yourself right now, about whatever is stealing your peace today, is this actually within my control? If it is, act decisively without excuses. If it is not, release your grip on it the way you'd release a rope burning your palms. Not because you don't care, but because holding on is only burning you further. This single distinction, practiced daily, is often the difference between a person who is dragged through life, reacting to everything, and a person who moves through life with quiet, immovable authority. It is the foundation stone. Everything else we discuss today is built on top of it. Principle 2, Amor fati, the love of fate. Here's where Stoicism stops being simply a coping mechanism and becomes something far more radical. It's not enough, the Stoics argued, to merely accept what happens to you. You must learn to love it. This idea, later popularized by Nietzsche under the Latin phrase Amor fati, has deep roots in Stoic thought. Epictetus taught that we should not merely wish that events happen as we would like, but rather wish that events happen as they do happen, and in that alignment, find peace. Consider the story often told of a Stoic student who lost his home in a fire. Everything he owned turned to ash overnight. His teacher, instead of offering comfort in the way we might expect, asked him a question. What has philosophy taught you to have ready for an event such as this? The student, through his grief, answered, to desire and avoid what depends on me, not to attempt to escape what does not depend on me. His teacher nodded and simply said, then use what has happened as material. That phrase, use what has happened as material, is the heart of Amor fati. Every setback becomes raw material for the next version of yourself. The fire doesn't stop being tragic, but it stops being only tragic. It becomes an opportunity to demonstrate resilience, resourcefulness, and character that could not have been demonstrated any other way. Think of your own life for a moment. Think of the worst thing that ever happened to you, the relationship that shattered, the job that vanished, the plan that collapsed. Now ask yourself honestly, did that event, however painful, ever end up teaching you something, revealing something, or redirecting you towards something you would not trade back? Most people, when they're honest, find that their greatest wounds eventually became the foundation of their greatest strength. Amor fati simply asks you to stop waiting years to arrive at that realization. It asks you to greet the difficulty now, in real time, as material rather than as enemy. This doesn't mean you pretend to be happy about tragedy. It means you stop wasting energy wishing reality were different, and instead pour all of that energy into working skillfully with the reality that actually exists. Principle 3, Memento mori, remember you will die. Roman generals, when they returned home in triumph, paraded through the streets while crowds cheered and threw flowers. And behind the general riding in his chariot stood a slave whose only job was to lean toward his ear periodically and whisper, Memento mori, remember you will die. It sounds morbid. It is actually one of the most life-affirming practices in the entire Stoic tradition. Epictetus taught his students to keep death, exile, and every other seemingly dreadful thing before their eyes daily, not to breed despair, but to strip away the illusion of permanence that makes us waste our lives on trivial anxieties. Here is why this works. Imagine you found out with total certainty that you had exactly 1 year left to live. Would you still spend 3 hours a day scrolling through the achievements of strangers on a screen, quietly resenting your own life? Would you still avoid the conversation you've been avoiding for a year? Would you still stay in the job that hollows you out, telling yourself there's plenty of time to change later? Memento mori is a tool that collapses that false sense of later and forces you back into the only moment you ever actually have now. There's a version of this that Seneca describes beautifully. He says most people don't actually lack time. They simply waste enormous amounts of it, and then act shocked when they discover, too late, that it has run out. He compares life to a sum of money. No one thinks their fortune is small if they manage it well, yet everyone is quick to complain that their life is too short, even while squandering it constantly. Try this experiment today. At some point, pause and genuinely ask yourself, if I knew I would die tonight, is this how I would want to have spent today? Not as a source of anxiety, but as a source of clarity. Memento mori is not about fearing death. It's about using the fact of death as a filter, a way of instantly identifying what actually matters and discarding everything else with total confidence. Principle 4, Premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. If memento mori is remembering that death is coming, premeditatio malorum is imagining in advance everything else that might go wrong, deliberately, calmly and specifically, so that when hardship arrives, you are never caught off guard. This might sound like the opposite of positive thinking, and in a sense, it is. But the Stoics discovered something that modern psychology has since confirmed through Research on anxiety and resilience. Rehearsing difficulty in a controlled, calm way drastically reduces the emotional damage when that difficulty actually arrives. Picture two travelers about to board a flight. The first has never once considered that the flight could be delayed. The moment it is delayed, he is thrown into rage, texting furiously, radiating fury at the gate agent who has no control over the weather. The second traveler, before ever leaving home, quietly thought through the possibility. The flight might be delayed. My luggage might be lost. My plans might need adjusting. When the delay actually happens, he simply nods, opens a book, and adjusts his afternoon. Same event. Two entirely different experiences. The difference was not luck. It was preparation of the mind. Epictetus urged his students to say to themselves, before setting out to the public baths, which in Rome could be crowded, chaotic, occasionally theft-prone places, I am going to encounter people who push, people who insult, people who steal. This wasn't pessimism. It was inoculation. If those things happened, he was ready. If they didn't happen, he was pleasantly surprised. Either way, he won. Try applying this before a difficult meeting, a hard conversation, a flight, a first date, a medical appointment. Spend 60 seconds beforehand imagining, without flinching, the worst reasonable outcome. Not to manifest doom, but to remove its power to shock you. You will find that the imagined version is almost always worse than what actually happens, and that, simply by rehearsing it, you've already survived it once in your mind. Principle 5. The discipline of ascent. Here's a principle that sounds abstract at first, but is, in practice, one of the most immediately usable tools in this entire list. Epictetus taught that it is not events that disturb people, but the judgments we form about those events. A closed door is just a closed door until we assign it the meaning, this is a disaster. A harsh comment is just sound waves until we assign it the meaning, I am worthless. The event and our judgment of the event are two separate things, and between them lies a small but crucial gap where we have a choice. This is called the discipline of ascent, the practice of pausing before you agree with the first impression your mind hands you, and examining whether that impression is actually true. Imagine receiving a text message from a close friend that simply says, "We need to talk." Instantly, your mind may race, something is wrong. They're angry with me, this is bad news. Notice, none of that is contained in the 4 words of the text. Your mind manufactured an entire narrative, and then reacted to the narrative as though it were fact. The discipline of ascent asks you to catch that process in motion. To say to your own mind, this is only an impression, not yet a fact. Let me withhold judgment until I actually know more. This single habit, practiced daily, can dissolve enormous amounts of unnecessary suffering. Most of the pain in a normal day doesn't come from what actually happens. It comes from the story we instantly and unconsciously attach to what happens. Epictetus is essentially teaching an ancient form of what modern cognitive therapists now call cognitive reframing, except he was teaching it 2,000 years before it had a clinical name. Next time you feel a sudden spike of anxiety, anger, or dread, try pausing for just 3 seconds and asking, what actually happened? In plain fact, without my interpretation added. You'll often find the raw fact is far smaller and far more survivable than the story your mind built around it. If this is resonating with you so far, take a moment to hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear this. And if you want more of this kind of practical, no-fluff philosophy, subscribing means you won't miss what's coming next. Now let's continue, because the next principle is one Epictetus lived out under some of the harshest conditions imaginable. Principle 6. Voluntary discomfort. At first glance, choosing discomfort on purpose sounds completely irrational. After all, modern life is built around making everything easier. We spend money on convenience, comfort, and entertainment, because we've been taught that an easier life is automatically a better life. The Stoics challenged that belief. They practiced something known as voluntary discomfort, the deliberate decision to step away from comfort in small, controlled ways so that comfort would never become something they depended on. Their goal wasn't to suffer. Their goal was freedom. Seneca often described setting aside certain days to eat the simplest food, wear rough clothing, and live with fewer comforts than usual. During these moments, he would ask himself, "Is this really the condition I was so afraid of?" He wasn't punishing himself or trying to prove how tough he was. He simply wanted to test his fears against reality. Again and again he discovered that life without luxury was still manageable. His fears had been far greater than the actual experience. That lesson is just as valuable today. Most of our anxiety comes from imagining what might happen if we lose the things we've grown attached to. We fear losing money, comfort, technology, or convenience because we've convinced ourselves that happiness depends on them. But when you willingly spend a day eating simple meals, sleeping on a hard surface, taking a cold shower, or staying away from your phone, something powerful happens. You realize that you can survive without those comforts. The fear begins to weaken, because you've already experienced what you once thought was unbearable. Think about two different people. One has never gone a single day without air conditioning, hot showers, a soft bed, or constant entertainment. Deep inside, they quietly worry about losing those comforts, and that fear influences many of their choices. They avoid risks because they don't want to lose the lifestyle they've become dependent on. The other person occasionally chooses discomfort. They skip a meal, spend a day offline, take cold showers, or live more simply for a short time. Instead of becoming weaker, they become more confident because they've proven to themselves that comfort is a luxury, not a necessity. This is why voluntary discomfort is so powerful. It teaches you that your peace of mind isn't created by external comfort but by internal strength. The more you practice facing small challenges willingly, the less control fear has over your decisions. You stop reacting to every craving and every inconvenience because you've trained yourself to stay calm even when life isn't comfortable. This practice also helps reduce anxiety and break unhealthy habits. Every time you resist the urge to seek instant comfort, you strengthen your self-control. Your mind becomes more resilient, your confidence grows, and temporary discomfort no longer feels like a threat. Here's a simple challenge. This week, choose one comfort you normally rely on and give it up for a single day. Pay attention to how your mind reacts. Notice the cravings, the excuses, and the discomfort as they rise. Then watch them slowly disappear. In that moment, you'll discover one of the Stoics' greatest lessons. You're far stronger than your comfort has allowed you to believe. Principle 7. Indifference to reputation. One of the hardest lessons in Stoicism is also one of the most freeing. You cannot control what other people think about you, so don't build your life around their opinions. Their judgments belong to them, not to you. The moment you stop chasing approval, you begin to experience a level of freedom that most people never reach. Epictetus explained this idea with remarkable clarity. If someone criticizes you and what they say is true, accept it, learn from it, and become a better person. But if the criticism is false, why allow it to disturb your peace? A lie doesn't become reality simply because someone believes it. Instead of wasting energy defending yourself against every opinion, focus on living in a way that reflects your values. Growth comes from truth, not from the fear of being disliked. The problem is that many people spend their entire lives performing for an invisible audience. They choose their clothes, filter their words, post on social media, and even make life-changing career decisions based on what they think others will approve of. Without realizing it, they give strangers the power to shape their identity. The Stoics believed this was one of the greatest forms of self-imposed slavery. No one has authority over your peace unless you choose to hand it to them. Epictetus shared another powerful lesson. Imagine feeling disappointed because you weren't invited to an important event or recognized for your achievements. His response was simple. If earning that invitation required pretending to be someone you're not, sacrificing your principles, flattering the wrong people, or abandoning your integrity, then missing out wasn't a loss at all. In reality, you protected something far more valuable, your character. We only feel rejected because we've mistakenly connected our self-worth to other people's approval. This doesn't mean you should ignore everyone or become emotionally distant. Wise advice should always be welcomed, no matter who it comes from. But there's an important difference between accepting helpful feedback and allowing someone's opinion to define your value. Your character, your integrity, and your own judgment should always come first. Other people's opinions can provide information, but they should never become the final verdict on who you are. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. How many decisions have you made simply because you were afraid of being judged? How many opportunities have you avoided because you worried about criticism or rejection? For most people, the answer is far more than they'd like to admit. Every time you let fear of opinion guide your choices, you surrender a piece of your freedom. The Stoics remind us that real confidence isn't built on praise, popularity, or recognition. It comes from knowing that your actions are guided by your principles rather than by the changing opinions of others. The day you stop measuring your worth through applause or criticism is the day you begin living on your own terms, and that is one of the greatest forms of freedom any person can achieve. Principle 8. The view from above. Marcus Aurelius, who studied deeply from Epictetus's teachings, even though they never met in person, described a mental exercise now sometimes called the view from above. He encouraged himself to imagine rising up, higher and higher, above his city, above the empire, above the entire earth, watching human affairs shrink into tiny specks, armies marching, weddings, funerals, market squares, all of it reduced to barely visible movement on the surface of a small blue globe. The purpose of this exercise was not to make life feel meaningless. It was the opposite, to place our immediate anxieties into proper scale. The argument you had this morning, the mistake you made in a meeting, the comment someone posted about you online, from this elevated vantage point, all of it becomes almost comically small. And once you see how small it is, you stop giving it the enormous emotional weight your nervous system instinctively wants to give it. Try this exercise yourself right now, wherever you're watching this. Picture the exact worry currently sitting in your chest. Now imagine rising above your house, above your street, above your city, high enough to see the curve of the earth, the lights of distant cities, the vast darkness of space surrounding this one fragile, glowing planet. Somewhere down there is your worry. From up here, can you even find it? This is not a trick to dismiss real problems. It's a tool to correctly calibrate how much space a problem deserves in your mind versus how much space your anxiety is currently giving it. Ancient Stoics used this exercise regularly, especially before difficult decisions, arguments, or moments of grief. It resets perspective in a way that almost nothing else can, because it doesn't argue you out of your emotions. It simply reminds your mind of the true size of the stage you're standing on. Marcus Aurelius took this exercise even further in his private writings, extending the perspective not just across space but across time. He would remind himself of the vast stretches of history before his birth and the vast stretches that would follow after his death, noting how brief and small his own portion of existence truly was in comparison. He would think of great empires that once seemed permanent and had already crumbled into dust by his own lifetime, and use this to loosen his grip on the idea that his own current circumstances were uniquely permanent or uniquely important. This wasn't meant to induce despair about insignificance. It was meant to induce a kind of calm humility, the recognition that whatever crisis feels all-consuming today will, from a wider vantage point, be barely a footnote. There's a practical version of this exercise that doesn't require imagining outer space. Simply ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? Will this matter in 1 year? Will this matter next month? For the vast majority of daily frustrations, a rude comment, a delayed response, a minor mistake at work, the honest answer is no. It will not matter, and in fact, you likely won't even remember it. This doesn't mean nothing matters. It means most things matter far less than our nervous system, in the heat of the moment, insists they do. The view from above is simply a tool for accessing that truth immediately, rather than waiting years to realize it in hindsight. Principle 9. Living according to nature. This phrase, live according to nature, appears throughout Stoic writing, and it is frequently misunderstood. The Stoics did not mean living in the wilderness, rejecting civilization or worshipping the outdoors. They meant something far more precise, living in alignment with your nature as a rational, social being, using reason to guide your actions, and recognizing your natural role within the wider community of humanity. Epictetus taught that human beings are naturally equipped with reason specifically so that we can examine our impressions, make wise judgments, and act with virtue, rather than simply reacting like animals to every impulse and appetite. To live according to nature, then, means to actually use the tool you were given, your rational mind, rather than being dragged around by every passing emotion, craving, or fear. There's also a social dimension to this principle that's easy to miss. The Stoics believed humans are naturally interconnected, part of what Marcus Aurelius called a single body made of many limbs. Acting against the interests of others, purely for selfish gain, was considered a kind of self-mutilation, like a hand, attacking the rest of the body it belongs to. Living according to nature, then, also means recognizing your responsibilities to your community, your family, and even strangers, because your nature as a social creature is just as real as your nature as a rational one. Consider how much modern anxiety comes from living against this dual nature, either suppressing our reason in favor of impulsive reaction, doom-scrolling emotional outbursts, decisions made purely from fear, or isolating ourselves from genuine community in favor of shallow, comparison-driven online interaction. The Stoic prescription is remarkably simple to state, even if difficult to practice. Think clearly before you act, and remember you are not separate from the people around you. Their well-being and yours are quietly, permanently intertwined. There's a useful way to test whether a particular action aligns with living according to nature. Ask yourself 2 questions before any significant decision. First, is this action guided by reason, or is it simply the path of least resistance driven by a passing emotion or craving? Second, does this action, if everyone in my position took it, strengthen or weaken the community I belong to? A decision made purely out of fear or impulse, without regard for its effect on others, tends to fail both tests. A decision made with clear thinking and with some consideration for the people it touches tends to pass both. Epictetus often used the analogy of an actor in a play to describe this alignment. He said that we do not get to choose the role we're assigned in life. Whether we're born wealthy or poor, healthy or sick, in a stable time or a chaotic one, but we do get to choose how well we play whatever role has been given to us. A skilled actor playing a beggar performs that role with just as much excellence as a skilled actor playing a king, because the excellence lies in the performance, not in the status of the character. Living according to nature, in this sense, means committing fully to playing your actual role. Parent, friend, colleague, citizen, whatever it may be, with reason, integrity, and care for the larger production you're part of, rather than resenting the role you were given or performing it half-heartedly while wishing for a different one. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who takes their growth seriously. Drop a comment below telling me which of these 9 principles has already made a difference in your life. It helps other viewers see real examples, and it helps this channel grow so we can keep making videos like this. Now let's arrive at the final principle, the one Epictetus considered the foundation beneath all the others. Principle 10, the inner citadel. Epictetus taught that within every human being lies something untouchable, a core of judgment, will, and character that no external force can ever reach unless we allow it to. He sometimes referred to this as the ruling faculty, and later Stoic-influenced thinkers particularly in describing Marcus Aurelius's inner life, called it the inner citadel, a fortress at the center of the self that no army, no illness, no insult, no loss can ever actually breach. Remember the story from the very beginning of this video. Epictetus's leg being broken by his master. His body was harmed. His property at the time was entirely controlled by another man. His social status was as low as Roman society allowed, and yet his judgment, his will, his character, the things he identified as truly his, remained completely untouched. That is the inner citadel in action. Not a denial of pain, but a refusal to let external force dictate the state of the only thing that was ever truly his to protect. This is the principle that quietly holds up every other principle in this video. The dichotomy of control tells you what to focus on. Amor fati tells you how to relate to what happens. Memento, mori, and Premeditatio malorum prepare you for hardship. The discipline of ascent gives you a tool for daily practice. Voluntary discomfort proves your resilience. Indifference to reputation protects your self-worth. The view from above gives you scale. Living according to nature gives you direction. But the inner citadel is the actual location where all of this is built. The fortress itself. Here is the practical version of this principle. No matter what happens to you today, this year, in this lifetime, job loss, heartbreak, illness, public failure, private grief, there remains always a small untouchable room inside you where your judgment, your character, and your choice about how to respond still belong entirely to you. No one can enter that room without your permission. Not your harshest critic, not your worst circumstance. Not even, as Epictetus demonstrated with his own broken leg, physical torture. That room is yours. It has always been yours. The entire practice of Stoicism is simply the daily work of strengthening the walls of that room so that when life inevitably tests them, they hold, bringing it all together. Let's step back for a moment and look at what we've actually built today. 10 principles, each one a tool, each one tested not in comfortable theory, but in the actual, difficult lives of the people who developed them. Epictetus did not write these ideas from a palace. He wrote them, or rather taught them, since he never actually wrote a word himself. His student Arrian recorded his lectures. As a man who had been enslaved, crippled, and eventually exiled from Rome by an emperor who feared the influence philosophers held over the public. Despite all of that, or perhaps because of all of that, he built one of the most resilient and useful philosophical systems in human history. The remarkable thing about these 10 principles is that they don't require you to change your circumstances at all. You don't need a new job, a new relationship, a new city, or a new bank account to begin practicing any of this. The dichotomy of control is available to you the next time you're stuck in traffic. Amor fati is available the next time something doesn't go your way. Memento mori is available every single morning you wake up. Premeditatio, malorum is available before every difficult conversation you're dreading. The discipline of ascent is available the very next time your phone buzzes with a message that makes your stomach drop. Voluntary discomfort is available the next time you're tempted to reach for the easiest, softest option. Indifference to reputation is available the next time you catch yourself performing for an imagined audience. The view from above is available any time you close your eyes and choose to rise. Living according to nature is available in your very next decision. And the inner citadel, that untouchable fortress, has been available to you this entire time, whether you knew it or not. The Stoics were not interested in comfort. They were interested in strength, the kind of strength that doesn't depend on good luck, favorable circumstances, or the approval of others. That is precisely why their ideas have survived for over 2,000 years, studied by emperors, slaves, soldiers, and now by you. Epictetus once said that it is not events that disturb people, but their judgments about events. If there is one sentence to carry with you after watching this video, let it be that one, because within it lies the entire promise of Stoicism. You may not control what happens to you, but you have always controlled, and will always control, the fortress within. Before you go, I want to ask you something directly. Of these 10 principles, which one do you most need to practice this week? Not which one sounds the best intellectually, which one, if you actually lived it out, would change how your week goes. Write it in the comments. I read every single one, and there's real value in seeing which principle resonates with different people at different stages of life. If this video gave you even one moment of clarity, do 3 things before you leave. Hit like, because it directly tells YouTube to show this to more people who are struggling with the exact things we just talked about. Subscribe to Wisdom of the Stoics, because we release videos like this regularly, each one built to give you a practical tool you can use the same day you watch it. And share this with one person in your life who needs to hear about the inner citadel today, because someone in your life right now is fighting a battle that this exact idea could help them win. Thank you for spending this time with me. Go build your fortress. I'll see you in the next one.